The space station Orion's Rest was old, quiet, and tired. Its metal walls carried the marks of many wars and many species. Ships came and went, but pain always stayed a little longer. In one forgotten medical wing, a young alien girl lay alone on a white bed. Staring at the ceiling lights, her name was Ray. She was small for her species. Her skin pale blue and cracked in places where burns had healed badly. Only one of her hands was real. The rest of her body had been rebuilt slowly by human machines, metal bones, grown flesh, careful stitching. She remembered nothing of the explosion that destroyed her ship. Only fire and screaming, and then darkness, when she woke up days later. The first face she saw was not a Dr. It was a human custodian. His name was Ethan. He was tall, tired, and dressed in a simple gray uniform. He carried a cleaning cart and smelled faintly of soap and coffee. When he saw her eyes open, he froze like a child caught doing something wrong. "Oh," he said softly. "You're awake." Ray did not scream. She did not try to run. Something about his voice was calm, gentle. He stepped back at once, keeping his distance, hands open so she could see them. "I'll get the nurse," he said. "Don't worry." But before he turned, Ray reached out with her only real hand and touched his sleeve. "Please," she whispered through a weak translator. "Don't go." No one had stayed before so Ethan stayed. He came every night after that. He cleaned quietly, spoke softly, and never asked questions she could not answer. When the medical machines failed, he brought her water. When she shook from nightmares, he sat on the floor near her bed and talked about earth rain, trees, and something called milkshakes. Ray listened. She learned humans were strange. They were fragile, but stubborn. Loud, but kind in small, careful ways. Ethan never touched her unless she asked. Never stared at her scars. Never treated her like a monster. To Ray, that meant safety. On her world, caretakers were sacred. Those who stayed were family. One night, when the station lights dimmed and the corridor outside was silent, Ray asked a question that had been growing in her mind for days. "Ethan," she said slowly. "Yeah?" He replied, wiping the floor. "You are male, yes?" He smiled a little. "Last time I checked." Her eyes glowed faintly as her translator worked. "Human females produce milk for their young," she said. "I have learned this from the station records." And nodded. "That's true." Ray hesitated, then leaned forward slightly, curious, innocent. "Then," she said carefully, "you mean human males have milk too?" The room went very still. Ethan dropped his cloth. He stared at her, mouth opening, then closing again. His face turned red in a way Ray had learned meant surprise or embarrassment. "What?" he said. "I am confused," Ray admitted. "On my world, any protector can feed a child. Care changes the body. I thought humans were similar." She was not joking. She was not teasing. Her eyes were full of honest wonder. Ethan laughed once, short and nervous, then quickly raised his hands. No, that's not how it works for us." "Oh," Ray said softly. She tilted her head. "Then where is it stored?" Ethan swallowed hard. Before he could answer, Ray moved, weak but curious. Her hand reaching slightly forward, not to harm, not to shame. Only to understand. Ethan stepped back at once. "No," he said gently but firmly. "That's not okay." Ray froze. Her skin shifted color, darkening in embarrassment. She pulled her hand back instantly. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I crossed a boundary." Ethan's voice softened. "You didn't know. It's okay." But before anything more could be said, heavy boots echoed in the hallway. Security was coming, and the galaxy was about to misunderstand everything. The heavy boots echoed louder as the security team reached the room. Ray shrank back into her bed, her silver eyes wide with fear. She had never seen humans act with such anger, and the suits and weapons made her heart pound. On her world, curiosity was respected. Asking questions, exploring, even touching to understand, these were all signs of trust. But here, she could feel their suspicion. Sharp as the cold metal walls around them, Ethan stepped forward quickly, raising his hands to show there was no threat. She wasn't, he began. But the words got lost under the echo of commands. Step back, custodian, one guard barked. Non-human contact, inappropriate, restraining her now. Liray's translator struggled to keep up, her voice trembling. No, he helps me. He feeds me when the machines fail. The guards ignored her protests. They saw only a small alien girl and a human male in close proximity. Misunderstanding was easy in a galaxy that feared what it could not control. One of the guards moved forward, grabbing Lyray's arm with a force that made her gasp. She tried to pull away, but her damaged body made her weak. The pain in her chest was nothing compared to the confusion and shame flooding her mind. Ethan stood frozen. His heart raced, but he did not flinch. He had grown up on Earth hearing stories of his ancestors fighting for what was right, even when others did not understand. He knew he could not let them hurt her, or let the story paint her curiosity as something shameful. Stop! He shouted. She didn't mean anything wrong. The guard's eyes narrowed. Custodian, step aside. You are being suspended. Ethan's chest tightened. Suspended, not for failing at his job, not for neglect, but for trying to teach, to care, to be human. Liray watched, tears forming at the edges of her eyes. She did not understand punishment. On her planet, someone who protected, who healed, who stayed by your side, that person was honored. Please, she whispered again, voice trembling. He saved me. He cares. You do not understand. The guards ignored her. They moved with mechanical precision, escorting Ethan away. Liray tried to reach for him, her single real hand stretching, trembling, but no one noticed. Her small body shook, not from fear, but from grief. She felt a hollow emptiness grow inside her chest, the first real pain since her rescue. Alone, Liray curled into the thin hospital sheets. The hum of the machines filled the silence, and for the first time since she woke, she felt entirely alone. Ethan's laughter, his gentle words, the careful explanations about human ways, all of it seemed gone, replaced by the cold certainty that the galaxy would never understand. Yet, despite the fear, there was a spark inside her. She remembered his face, the patience in his eyes, and the way he never judged her. That spark refused to die. She whispered to herself, I will see him again. I must understand him. I must learn what humans truly are. Ethan, meanwhile, sat in his small quarters. The door was locked. The suspension was official. He replayed the scene over and over. He thought about Liray's silver eyes, the way she had reached out without shame, only curiosity. He thought about the first time he had seen her wake up, alone and terrified, and how he had simply stayed. He was angry, yes. Angry at the guards. Angry at the bureaucracy that punished care. But more than anything, he was worried. For her. The galaxy may misunderstand humans, and humans may misunderstand aliens, but Liray was too fragile for this world. Too young. Too trusting. He clenched his fists. I won't let them break her, he whispered to himself. I will find a way back to her. I will make them see the truth. On the other side of the locked door, Lyray's tiny hand pressed against the metal sheets of the bed. She whispered into the cold air, not knowing if Ethan could hear her. I trust you. I always will. And in that moment, across the cold, clinical distance of Orion's Rest, both human and alien realized the same truth. Kindness could be punished, but it could never be erased. The bond between them, fragile and forbidden, had been formed. And no misunderstanding, no guard. No rule of the station could take that away. The galaxy, however, would still try. It was only the beginning. The doors of the medical wing clanged shut behind them, leaving Ray alone in the sterile humming room. She pressed her small hands against the sheets, her chest tight with panic. Everything felt heavier now. Every sound, every light, every shadow seemed sharper, colder. The warmth she had felt with Ethan, his careful voice, his steady presence was gone. The walls themselves seemed to judge her. The guards left only after recording every detail. Their clipboards and voices were mechanical, cold, and final. Non-human contact, they said, repeating phrases that felt like thunder to Ray's ears. Words meant to define guilt. Words meant to separate. She did not understand why kindness could be seen as danger, why curiosity could be called inappropriate. On her world, the act of reaching out, of learning, was sacred. Here, it had become a crime. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in the small gray room assigned to suspended staff. His uniform was folded neatly on the chair beside him, but his hands fidgeted. He kept replaying the incident in his mind, the way Ray had reached, the way he had caught her hand before it went too far, the shock in her silver eyes. Every detail made his chest ache. He did not feel anger for the station or the guards. He felt grief that a being so small and trusting could be punished for trusting, and that the world could not see her innocence. The medical staff tried to explain things to Ray. Words poured over her like a river she could not cross. Protocols, they said. Boundaries, they said. Safety concerns. But the words had no meaning for her heart. She remembered the gentle way Ethan spoke of humans, the way he had smiled when she asked questions, the way he never judged her. No machine, no authority could replace that feeling of care. She pressed her head into the pillow, wishing the night would swallow her whole. She remembered her people's stories, whispered in the cradle of her childhood. Trust is a treasure. Protect those who give trust. Teach those who reach out with respect. On her world, the act of care was sacred. Yet here, it had been twisted into punishment. The tears came quietly at first, then harder, streaming over the soft blue of her cheeks. She cried not only for herself but for Ethan, who had been forced away, and for the strange, cold world that could not see what humans could be. Ethan could not rest. He tried to reason with the station administration, to explain that Ray's curiosity had been natural, innocent, and necessary for her healing. He told them about her scars, her fear, her need for patience. He explained how care could heal where medicine could not. But bureaucracy had walls thicker than steel, and their minds were locked behind protocols and fear. Suspension is temporary, they said. Rules are rules. But Ethan knew it was more than that. Ray's spirit had been touched by kindness, and no rule could undo that. Across the station, Ray lay awake all night. She imagined Ethan walking down the hallways, silent and alone, perhaps angry at the world, perhaps worried for her. Her heart ached for him, for the lost companionship, and for the cruel misunderstanding that separated them. She remembered the warmth of his hands, not in touch, but in presence, and it filled a hollow she had not known existed. The loneliness was heavier now, more pressing, more real. When the morning light finally filtered through the thick glass, Ray realized something new. The world did not understand kindness. It did not understand care. It did not understand trust. But she did. And she remembered every detail of Ethan's patient teaching, his gentle corrections, his unwavering presence. She pressed her hand to her chest, making a promise to herself. I will not forget. I will see him again. Ethan, confined to the staff quarters, stared out at the blinking lights of Orion's Rest. Somewhere in that massive station, Ray was waiting. Somewhere she was remembering him too. He clenched his fists, determined. The galaxy might punish them, separate them, misunderstand them, but he would find a way back to her. Care could not be erased. Trust could not be erased, and neither could the bond they had begun to build. That day, Liray and Ethan learned something about the galaxy and about humanity itself. Sometimes being right did not mean being safe. Sometimes understanding was punished. But sometimes patience and kindness planted seeds stronger than fear, rules, or walls. And both of them held onto those seeds, fragile and precious, knowing that what they had begun could survive the coldest judgment. The galaxy had made its decision. It had chosen separation. But Liray and Ethan were only at the beginning of their story. And neither rules nor distance could erase the spark of understanding, trust, and care that had been ignited between them. Days passed on Orion's rest, each one heavier than the last. The station's hum felt louder in Lyray's ears, every beep and hiss a reminder that Ethan was gone. She lay in her bed, staring at the white ceiling, her single real hand tracing the thin sheets as if she could feel his presence through them. But the room remained cold and silent. The machines worked, the medics came and went, but no one spoke to her the way he had. No one explained patiently. No one smiled and told stories about Earth, or about simple things like rain or clouds or milkshakes. She tried to eat, but food had no taste. Her body needed nutrients, but her spirit ached more than her stomach. She remembered Ethan's voice, soft and steady, correcting her gently when she misunderstood, never judging, never shaming. She missed the small things, his careful movements, the way he never crowded her, the way he would sit on the floor beside her bed just to be present. Without him, the world felt harsh, mechanical, and unforgiving. Ethan, meanwhile, paced his quarters in a small rhythm that felt like a heartbeat. His suspension was official, yet it did nothing to quiet the thoughts in his mind. He replayed the incident over and over, the moment she reached toward him, the way he caught her hand, the subtle fear in her eyes. He could not stop thinking about the misunderstanding, about the way the galaxy judged innocence as guilt. He wanted desperately to correct it, but rules and protocol pinned him down. He wrote letters he could not send, walked corridors he could not enter, and waited for a chance that might never come. Liray's nights were the hardest. She would lie awake, listening to the faint sounds of the station, the distant engines, the muffled footsteps, the quiet breathing of the humans outside. She imagined Ethan walking past her door, imagining that she needed him, that she was calling him silently with her mind. She whispered his name sometimes, hoping the sound would carry, hoping he could hear her in the silence. When tears came, they were quiet, dripping onto the pillow as she remembered the warmth of his hands and the calmness in his voice. The doctors tried to help. They monitored her health, gave her medicines, offered explanations, but none of it reached the part of her that needed understanding and patience. Liray's species healed not just with medicine, but with emotional presence. Care, attention, trust, they were as necessary as oxygen. Without them, healing was incomplete. And Ethan had been the only one who understood that dot in his quarters. Ethan refused to rest properly. He thought about Liray's resilience, her curiosity, her quiet bravery in the face of fear. He thought about the spark in her eyes when she first asked him about human milk, the innocence with which she tried to reach out. That moment, so small and simple, was now forbidden, yet it meant everything. He promised himself silently, I will not let her suffer because the galaxy misunderstands. I will return. I will find a way. On the station, the silence between them stretched, a tangible thing. It was not only distance that separated them, but misunderstanding and bureaucracy. Each day Liray survived felt like a small victory, a testament to her strength. But the isolation carved deep lines into her heart. She longed for guidance, for the quiet reassurance of someone who would teach her without fear. Every time she closed her eyes, she could see Ethan's face. His calm eyes told her, you are safe, you are seen, you are not alone. Then in the fourth night, something shifted. Liray realized that though Ethan was gone, his lessons remained. She remembered the way he had explained boundaries without cruelty, the way he had been patient even when she made mistakes. That patience was a shield she could carry. She began to speak to herself softly, repeating the phrases he had used, naming her feelings, explaining her thoughts aloud. It was not the same as having him there, but it was a start. She could survive, she could endure, and she could remember him. Ethan, unaware, continued his private rebellion against the station's rules. He wrote detailed notes about her progress, her emotional needs, her fears, and her curiosities. He formulated plans, quietly plotting how he could return without breaking every rule at once. His heart ached every moment they were apart, yet that ache strengthened his resolve. For him, for her, for the bond that had begun in a simple act of care, he would find a way. The long silence became a bridge, a test of their patience and their trust. Lee learned endurance. Ethan learned hope. And both discovered something the galaxy often overlooked: connection, when genuine, could survive even the coldest isolation. By the end of the week, Lee whispered into the empty room, "I will see you again, Ethan. Somehow, I will." And somewhere far away, Ethan whispered back into the quiet of his room, "I promise, Lee, I will find a way back." The distance was great, but the bond was greater. Ethan sat in the gray quarters of Orion's Rest, staring at the blinking lights of the station's control panels. Each pulse reminded him of Lee, alone, waiting, watching, trusting. He could not stay suspended. Rules were rules, but care was stronger than rules. Every fiber of his being screamed that he had to return to her, to protect her, to be the presence she needed. The galaxy could misunderstand, the guards could punish him, and the administration could rage, but he had to act. He began planning quietly. Every corridor, every camera, every security schedule he memorized. He noted when patrols shifted, which doors were locked, and which ones could be bypassed. He did not rush, for he knew patience was part of care. Lee's trust had been earned slowly, and he would not ruin it with reckless haste. Every step had to be careful, precise, like the way he had first entered her room without startling her. Meanwhile, Lee spent her days in quiet reflection. She had started speaking aloud again, telling herself the stories Ethan had told her. She imagined the earth he described, rain dripping on leaves, rivers sparkling, children laughing. She repeated his phrases about patience and kindness, teaching herself to wait, teaching herself to endure. But her heart ached every moment he was gone. Nights were worse. She would press her small hand to the pillow and whisper his name, hoping the vibrations carried through the metal walls. She missed him not only for comfort, but for understanding, for the careful guidance that healed more than flesh ever could. The station staff noticed changes. Lee ate more, but still refused to engage fully. She nodded when spoken to, but said nothing. Machines recorded her vitals as stable, but they missed the quiet battles of her heart. Ethan had taught her that. Care was more than medication or monitoring. It was presence, attention, understanding. And the absence of that presence weighed heavily. Ethan's plan began in the dim hours of night, when the station hummed quietly and most humans were asleep. He slipped out of his quarters with only a maintenance badge, his tools, and determination. Every step was measured. He avoided cameras, moved along maintenance shafts, and whispered reassurances to himself. "It's okay," he told his own reflection in a metal panel. "I will see her again. I will not fail her." Back in her room, Lee lay awake, listening. She did not know Ethan had returned. She only felt it something different in the hum of the station, a shadow moving where no one should. She whispered, "Is it you?" and held her breath. Her heart pounded, wild with hope and fear. Could it really be him? Could a human be brave enough to defy the station, the guards, the rules, for her sake? She dared to believe. Ethan reached her door and paused, his hand on the cool metal. He looked through the small observation panel and saw her fragile, small, blue-skinned, trembling slightly but watching the door. The sight twisted something deep in his chest. She had survived alone, kept her hope alive, and here she was, waiting for him, unaware of the effort he had made. He took a deep breath and whispered through the door, "Lee Ray, it's me. I'm here." Her eyes widened. She sat up instantly, pressing her hand against the glass. The world had been empty and cold, and now it felt like warmth. "Ethan?" she whispered. Her voice cracked with disbelief and relief. You came back?" "Yes," he said softly. "I promised." The door lock clicked quietly under his tools. He moved swiftly but gently, entering her room without startling her. Lee Ray's silver eyes glowed faintly with emotion, fear, relief, gratitude, trust all mixed into one. Ethan knelt beside her bed, careful to stay at a respectful distance, hands visible. "I knew you would wait," he said. "I knew you could endure. And I knew I had to come back." She smiled faintly, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I knew you wouldn't leave me," she said. Her voice was trembling, but strong in its vulnerability. The moment was quiet, filled with unspoken understanding. Rules, bureaucracy, and judgment faded away. All that mattered was trust, care, and the bond that had grown despite distance and misunderstanding. Lee Ray reached out, not impulsively, not recklessly, but gently, resting her hand near his. He did not move closer until she allowed it, honoring her comfort. For the first time in weeks, the room felt warm, safe, alive. Lee Ray realized that care could survive rules, suspicion, and isolation. Ethan realized that courage was not only in grand battles, but in returning to someone who needed him most. That night, the long silence of Orion's rest ended. A bond, fragile yet unbreakable, had been reaffirmed. And both human and alien understood something simple and beautiful. Kindness and patience could overcome fear, distance, and even the coldest misunderstanding of the galaxy. After that night, the room felt different. Orion's rest had been cold, mechanical, and lonely, but now it felt alive. Lee Ray sat on her bed, small and fragile, but no longer alone. Ethan remained near her, careful to keep distance at first, letting her set the pace. He did not rush, did not judge, only offered quiet presence. She noticed the little things he did, the way he straightened the blanket, the soft hum of his voice when explaining machines, the gentle reminders to rest or drink water. Every small act was care, and every act spoke louder than words. Lee Ray had started to eat again, slowly at first. Ethan would encourage her, never pushing, never scolding, only gently guiding. "You're strong," he would say. "You survived alone, and you will heal even better now." She learned to trust her body again, to feel it as something precious rather than broken. Each day, the scars on her pale blue skin seemed less like marks of pain and more like evidence of survival. She touched them carefully, remembering his words. Healing is not only medicine. It is presence, patience, and understanding. The station noticed the change. Nurses saw her laughing softly at Ethan's stories about Earth, about rain and children and strange foods. Doctors recorded improved vitals and faster recovery, but the real transformation was invisible to machines. Lee Ray's heart, once hollowed by fear and isolation, now began to fill with trust. She spoke more freely, asked questions, and even reached for small tasks, mimicking what Ethan had shown her. He encouraged her, praised her gently, and let her learn through observation and experience. Every day, their bond strengthened quietly, like roots growing beneath frozen ground. Ethan, too, felt the change. Suspension and bureaucracy had felt heavy, but seeing Lee Ray's slow recovery made every risk worthwhile. His heart warmed as she laughed at simple jokes, as she asked curious questions about humans, as she smiled with genuine joy. He realized that care was not only about action, but about consistency. He had been present once. Now he remained present, nurturing her trust, letting her lead when she was ready. In her recovery, he saw not only her growth, but the proof of something the galaxy often overlooked. Humans could heal, teach, and protect in ways far beyond strength or weapons. One afternoon, Lee Ray's hand brushed his, tentative and gentle. She froze, silver eyes wide. Ethan looked at her calmly, waiting, giving her the space to decide. Slowly, carefully, she placed her hand near his, feeling warmth and reassurance. It was not about curiosity or impulsiveness this time, it was trust. She had learned, through patience and quiet guidance, that he would not harm her, would not judge her, and would always protect her autonomy. That touch, small as it was, carried more meaning than words ever could. Days turned into weeks. Lee Ray began walking short distances alone, exploring the medical wing under Ethan's watchful eyes. Each step was celebrated with a quiet smile, a soft word of encouragement, or a gentle pat on the shoulder. She learned to navigate the corridors, read the displays, and even assist with small cleaning tasks, mimicking what Ethan had once done for her. She discovered confidence in her body, in her mind, and in the bond that tethered her to him. Ethan never forced progress. He never pressured her to speak or act before she was ready. Instead, he guided her like water shapes a stone slowly, patiently, persistently. Lee Ray learned that trust was not about speed, but about reliability. That even when the world punished curiosity or misunderstanding, care endured. And in that quiet, steady presence, she began to believe not only in him but in humanity. The other species on Orion's Rest began to notice the change too. A few guards softened their stance, giving her small nods of respect. The doctor started asking for Ethan's advice, curious about the methods that allowed such emotional healing. Slowly, the galaxy's rules began to bend around them, not because of defiance, but because of proof. Lee Ray thrived, not in spite of humans, but because of one human who showed her what care and patience truly meant. At night, when the station quieted, Lee Ray would sometimes whisper, "Thank you," as she pressed her small hand to the blanket where Ethan's had rested. And somewhere near her, he would smile, knowing she understood what he had always known. Kindness and patience were stronger than fear, stronger than rules, stronger than misunderstanding. And that strength, shared quietly between them, was the beginning of something far greater than either could imagine. The weeks of quiet healing had transformed the room. Orion's Rest no longer felt cold or distant. Lee Ray moved with confidence now, her steps steady, her eyes bright with curiosity rather than fear. The small scars on her pale blue skin no longer marked pain. They were proof of survival, resilience, and the care she had received. And at the center of this transformation was Ethan, the human who had stayed despite rules, despite misunderstanding, despite danger. Lee Ray often watched him as he worked quietly in the room, fixing a panel, tidying a tray, humming softly under his breath. To her, every gesture spoke volumes. His patience, his careful movements, the gentle way he never forced her to do anything. These were lessons more powerful than any medical machine. She had learned to read him, to trust him, and in return, she began to understand what humans could give, not just strength, not just survival, but protection, guidance, and quiet love. One afternoon, a group of station officials entered, curious about her recovery. Lee Ray sat upright, feeling a nervous flutter, but she remembered Ethan's teachings. She breathed deeply, steadied her gaze, and spoke clearly, recounting how a single human had cared for her when the galaxy did not understand. "He did not rush me," she said. "He did not judge me. He taught me patience, trust, and hope. That is more than medicine. That is what humans give." The officials exchanged glances. For a moment, the rules and bureaucracy seemed secondary to the truth in her voice. Ethan knelt beside her quietly, hands resting near hers, allowing her space yet remaining steadfast. The bond between them was evident to all, a bridge between species built on care, understanding, and respect. In the evenings, Lee and Ethan would sit together in the quiet of the medical wing. Sometimes they spoke of the galaxy beyond Orion's Rest, other ships, other species, other worlds. Sometimes they simply sat, the silence full of unspoken trust and comfort. Lee began to laugh more often, a soft musical sound that filled the sterile room with warmth. And Ethan realized that in teaching her to trust, to heal, and to survive emotionally, he had also taught the galaxy a quiet but powerful lesson. Humans could be the protectors, the teachers, and the caretakers that other species often underestimated. Her growth did not stop at emotional healing.